This is today's business leaders. Actionable advice from real-world professionals. And now here's your host, Gabe Arnold.
All right, today I have PJ Glassey back on. He was on with us a few episodes ago talking about his really revolutionary fitness strategy that he uses to help people get fit and in great shape in very little time every week. And I've actually kind of played with that concept a lot more since we talked about it, and started reading a book called Learn Anything Fast, which reminded me of our conversation too.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we touched on last time, and I wanted to dive into more for all of our audience here, is what you had shared about brain techniques. So why don't you give us kind of the opener of how you first stumbled upon that, and then jump into whatever you want to teach us about that.
Yeah. Well, the story starts out kind of sad, but then it gets better.
Okay.
So
Good.
Back in I guess it was the year 2000, Mom was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. And so that's what caused me to dive into the research on, brain science and, how the brain works and what causes Alzheimer's and if there's anything to do. And so back then in 2000, there wasn't a whole lot of research and studies on fixing it or reversing it. They were basically just saying, Western medicine, there's some drugs that can slow it down and can help some of the symptoms, but there's really nothing you can do. Once you're diagnosed, it's too late. So I thought, well, science is constantly changing, and what we know now is different from last year. So I'm going to keep studying it and figure out what's going on, and maybe some solutions and hacks. And so then the next 5 years, she was struggling with that, and there wasn't any real great, compelling research that was coming out in that time because it was still, so new. And so there wasn't a whole lot we can do. So she passed in 2005. And the things that I had learned so far were that exercise is awesome, green vegetables are fantastic, omega-3 fats, other kinds of fats, really good. So, Dad and I got her in that direction. She was working out at the X gym and all that, and I'm sure it helped. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of all we knew at the time. But since then, I haven't stopped with the research. I've been starting in 1987, I've been a research hound. And back then, it was more about exercise science and nutrition science. And then in 2000, I added the brain science stuff. And then I haven't stopped. So it's just become a complete passion for me because I want to be able to help other people. And I'm really glad that I've stayed in the research because just in the last year or two, they've come out with some proof that Alzheimer's can be reversed. So They used to think, yeah, I know.
I didn't know that.
No, most people don't because it's so new. They used to think that Alzheimer's could only be slowed down, best case scenario, but certainly not stopped, especially after you've been diagnosed. But now they're finding if the patient is willing, you can actually reverse it. The problem with Alzheimer's is the victim is typically not willing to do the things. Because at that point their brain has changed enough, and we go talk for hours on that, but that they're even less willing than they were before they got it. In most cases, now there's certain exceptions out there,
right?
But it's kind of most people that I've been talking to, they try to get their family member, whoever it is that has it, to do these things, and they're just not willing. They're just dragging their feet, and they turns into fights and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's certain exceptions, and there's certainly stories, and that's why they know it can be reversed, because there's some people who are willing to do these things to reverse it and heal themselves. And people are actually coming out of Alzheimer's now, and they're like, wow, this is amazing, and they realize it. And there's lots of things that have to do with that, but it really comes down. They used to think that for brain science and Alzheimer's, because they really go hand in hand, And by the way, when you're doing things that are good for the brain, you're also doing things that are good for the heart and vice versa. And I'll get into that a little bit more, how the brain and heart talk so much.
Okay.
But so they used to say that nutrition was number one, and then exercise was number two, and then number three was just learning stuff, learning new things, brain training tricks, brain exercises, and things like that. And then other things, like being social and, relationships, things like that. But those are the top three. So now they flip-flopped. So they've actually put exercise number one because it's that important for the brain to get oxygen. And then number two is nutrition. It's a close number two, but that's number two. And then three is still the whole brain training and game, brain games. There's some websites out there. Brain HQ is probably my favorite. Just for brain exercises, things like that. And so when they're doing these three things especially, and then some of the other things, they're actually able to reverse. It has to be pretty aggressive. They really have to pour themselves into it and put a lot of work and time into it. But it can be reversed now, which is super exciting. So just trying to get that message out as much as possible to give people hope.
Yeah.
As a side benefit for all this brain research that I was doing, I came up with some ways to actually train the brain like we train the body, because the brain is a muscle and willpower is a muscle, especially the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom, where we're able to look into the future, we're able to simulate, if I did this, what would happen, where animals can't do that. And so we can run scenarios. And the PFC, it's called the prefrontal cortex. The PFC takes up a lot of energy. Mm-hmm. And so we got to buff it up in order for it to keep its energy. And the PFC is where willpower is found in the brain. And that's why animals with small PFCs have hardly any willpower. And the larger the PFC, the more willpower and trainable that animal becomes. So a cat's got a little PFC. Can't train them to do much stuff, and the willpower is almost non-existent. And then you go up a little bit to a dog. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but
of course not.
Personal bias is coming out. But dogs are more trainable, and you can put dog biscuit on his nose and train him to not eat it, and that's willpower.
Yeah.
And so their PFC is a little bit bigger. And then you go, up to monkeys and then people and it just keeps going. So that separates us. But even a monkey can't simulate the future. So that's the biggest thing. And that's why we have so much more willpower and decision making and executive function and all that kind of stuff. And so the other thing is that I mentioned a little earlier is the PFC wears out. It tires out because it's like a muscle. Mm-hmm. That's why people do so great on their diet in the morning. And that's why people stick to their exercise routine if it's a morning routine. And it's why most people fall off the wagon towards the end of the day with their nutrition. They're more likely to cheat, afternoon and evening. And then they get home and they're like, why am I eating these chips? I was so good this morning. What the heck? I can't stop my hand. It's like I have no willpower anymore. Well, yeah, and in case you don't.
Yeah.
Because it's worn out. Decision fatigue throughout the day, all the stuff you've been going through throughout the day, and stress, good and bad, all that stuff wears out the PFC. So in my research and studying all this and learning about the brain and different parts of the brain, I came up with some brain training techniques. And it ranges from just getting some more energy back in the PFC, like simple meditation or the EFT technique where you're doing acupressure tapping type stuff, to tips and tricks for people to use for the moment when they don't have any willpower left or when they're emotionally eating, to break their pattern, to stop and turn it around and come up with really good ideas, not relying on their willpower, especially the last minute stuff where you don't have time to stop and take a break and meditate to get some of that space back in the PFC. It's quicker things like that. And I've got about 30 of them that I developed so far. Each I've made a video on. So when an ex-gym member comes to me with a struggle, instead of telling them like a typical trainer would say, hey, just suck it up and just do it. What's wrong with you? It's like saying, oh, okay, yeah, you're human. So try this brain training technique. I send them the email link to the video, and then see if it works. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, let me know. I'll send you another one.
Mm-hmm.
And so you keep throwing things up against the wall and seeing what sticks. But the really exciting thing is lately I've been hard at work developing a program that will allow me to offer less things to throw up against the wall, because it'll help me to categorize people based on their brain type. And so then I know which of the brain training lessons to suggest first, instead of just kind of going with my gut and having them try 4 or 5 before they find the one that really works really well. And so I'm building the site right now through beageandpeach.com, but because it's hard to spell beageandpeach.com, so here's the website braintype.me.
Okay.
So braintype me. And so that'll just forward to the site where it's going to be housed. But
cool.
By the time this podcast comes out, it'll be live.
Awesome.
So people can go there for free and first find their brain type, and then second, get some suggestions on how to eat, some brain training tips to help them when they're struggling, and what type of exercise they should be pursuing based on their brain type. So it's a huge shortcut. I mean, the brain training lessons were a huge shortcut in themselves, but now here's another huge leap. So we're getting closer to making this easy for humans to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And to realize there's tips and tricks out there to make stuff easy, instead of trying to struggle through it and stumble through it and find the thing that works and get frustrated and quit and yo-yo diet and all that stuff that we always get frustrated with all the time.
Yeah.
Getting closer and closer to a real good solution and a nice fix.
Very cool. So tell me more about how you've categorized brain types. Like, how many are there? How did you get there? How do you tell what kind of brain type somebody is? Obviously, everybody will be able to go check out the site when we share this, but share a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So there's a website, braintypes.com, and it's a guy, Jonathan P. Nagel, who's just a genius with this kind of stuff. And it in some ways reminds people of the Myers-Briggs, and there is 16 brain types like there are 16 personality types. But he's taken it way further. And then I've taken what he's done and focused it on getting healthy. So it's laser focused on fitness, nutrition, and other health habits to get healthy. Because that's another thing, is what you're focusing on is important. And if people focus on, getting ripped or shredded or getting the 6-pack or, something more superficial, they're way less likely to keep going for life. It's going to be more of a temporary thing, because skin deep is temporary. But when they focus on health, and that's what we do at XGym, is we help people get healthy. We just ignore the whole, let's get you shredded and ripped and lose your body fat and focus on all those things. We focus on health first. Then when people are healthy, then they aren't carrying around extra weight. Yeah. They've lost weight, but without trying to lose weight or body fat. So I've taken this and hyper-focused it on health, getting healthy. So braintypes.com helps people with other stuff. And it's great with just, life coaching and help, or what job you should be doing, and what kind of things make you happy, and what things your strengths, what you should focus on. Love it. It's a great tool. And I think people should do that too. But my job is just to hyper focus on the health aspect of it. Yeah, so that's where it's really pared down. But that, along with all the research I've been doing for the last almost 18 years now, put it all together into a program, really. And a coaching system eventually, but a whole very in-depth, comprehensive program. So people don't have to rely on their willpower anymore, and they don't have to yo-yo diet anymore. They don't have to fail. They can find something that's permanently achievable, because of their brain type, because now someone understands them. Now someone gets them. Now someone can tell them why they've been failing. It's not that they're a failure. It's not that they don't have enough willpower. It's that the stuff they've been trying hasn't made sense yet to their brain type.
That makes sense.
now we can find the program that will make sense for their brain type.
Wow, very cool. So what brain type are you?
Well, I'm a couple different brain types, but I'm mostly what they call the scientist.
Okay.
And which makes sense because I just can't. I love research. I can't stop. And I spend at least 2 hours a day and have since 1987. So that's a lot of hours if you add up.
Yeah,
that's
no kidding.
Some days I'll start in the morning, and if my day is free, it's like 6, 7 p.m. And Bev's like, "What have you been doing all day?" And I go, "Oh, I've been sitting here researching. I didn't realize it was 13 hours had gone by." But then the second brain type, my secondary is inventor. So you put scientist and inventor together, and you end up coming up with crazy stuff like this.
Very cool. Awesome. Yeah. Great. Well, that's very cool. We'll definitely be looking forward to checking out the site with those resources. And I love that you've taken the overall concept and drilled it into some, what you already do, and really helping people get probably the most important part of their life figured out, which is being healthy.
It really is the most important part. There's a lot of people out there, and they've got lots of goals. They've got goals of, I want to make this much money. I want to have this kind of house. I want to have this kind of car. And material stuff is fun. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's not what makes people happy. And the reason they want that stuff is because they think that's what's going to make them happy. Well, I'll tell you what makes people happy is being healthy. Because when you're healthy, your brain is healthy, your heart is healthy, and you're able to see clearly, and you have better relationships.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line, is the happiest people are not the richest people. A lot of times rich people are super unhappy. Not that being rich makes you unhappy, but you give money to someone who is trying to seek happiness through material goods, and they'll get more, or that money will, advance them towards what they think is going to make them happy, but they just end up getting less happy. You give money to somebody who's already happy, who, has the right relationships and is doing the right things for happiness, and they're probably going to get happier. They're probably going to give most of it away too.
Yeah.
But it's going to help them get happy. So money by itself isn't a problem. It's just, the kind of person that you are, it'll make you more of that person. And so there's plenty of rich, happy people, and there's plenty of rich, unhappy people. But that's kind of a side point. The real point is it's not about stuff, and it's not about money. It's about experiences. It's about memories. Because if you look back on your funnest, happiest times in life, it probably has to do with someone else, an experience you had with another person. It's probably not that new car you got, which, sure, that makes you happy for a couple weeks, but there's a big difference between happiness and joy. And when you go back in time and you think of what's made you the happiest, it's beyond happy. What you're going back to is a memory of joy. And stuff will make us happy temporarily, but stuff doesn't make us joyful. Experiences with other people and spiritual experiences are the only things that make us joyful. And those people that experience lots of different episodes of joy through their life are the happiest people on the planet. You hear about people like Mother Teresa, and you look at her life, and she every day she was just full of joy, just loved of what she did, but she was just interacting with people all the time and helping people every day. And she lived in a convent that was in the slums, run down, and she was poor her whole life because she wanted to be with her peeps. And she was arguably one of the happiest people on the entire planet. My dad went down to Mexico to help build some composting toilets for people that lived in the city dump in Mexico. And the thing that he was the most struck by is how happy the kids were of the families that lived in the dump. And they were just playing all day, and they were laughing and having a blast playing on the garbage piles because they had each other and they had really close relationships. And they had zero stuff, but they were just so much happier than American kids that are driving around in their Teslas and all that.
That's crazy, man. What a great...
Getting text messages. They're doing this all day. With their friends standing right next to them, texting their friends standing right next to them, instead of talking to their face, instead of having these relationships.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, what a great contrast. Wow. Yeah, that's a great breakdown of like happiness and joy, and that's a really interesting way to segment it. Everybody just thinks, are you happy, and maybe that's kind of shallow, but like joy is another level, and like you said, it's definitely the experiences and the relationships, and you're completely right. Having nice stuff, having a big house, having a nice car, having lots of money is wonderful, but like you said, it just perpetuates who you are. So if you haven't fixed who you are, it's going to be way worse. And if you are good, then it's just even better, and it's just more money. And like you said, the happy, rich, and successful give way more and think bigger and do more, and the miserable are just still miserable.
Yeah, absolutely, or more miserable.
Yeah.
It was one of my personal training clients from way back when I trained people out of their homes was a super rich woman. Her dad was the fourth richest guy in New York, and she was married to someone who made a lot of money and had a big mansion and house. And so I showed up one day for trainer, and she goes, "Oh, I'm so stressed out." And I go, "Oh, what's going on? Wow, what's going on?" I thought, someone had died or something. And she goes, "Well, my housekeeper is coming in an hour, and I don't know whether I should if I should rinse the dishes from the sink and put them in the dishwasher or just leave them in the sink. That's kind of part of her job." And then I was expecting her, this to start to be a really weird, a horrible, traumatic story. And then she was done. And so I waited for her. But that was it. That was the story. And I go, okay, so you're trying to figure out whether to put the dishes in the dishwasher or not before she gets here. She goes, "Yes. Oh my gosh, I can't." And then it dawned on me that people, we all need stress. It's actually, there's good stress, there's bad stress, and we need it. It's part of our human physiology, and stress is good in a lot of ways. And so when you have everything, you're just going to create stress because we have to have it. And your brain is going to make up stories if it's bored. And, there's lots of things that have to happen. And so it was very eye-opening to me because she really did. She had everything from a worldly point of view. Yeah. And so people are talking about, getting rich and all this kind of stuff. My number one first advice is, that's all fine and rich is fun, but let's get you happy first. Yeah. Let's get some brain training in there to get you healthy and happy, then focus on getting all that money and all that stuff, because then you'll be happier.
Yeah.
And it'll make you more of who you are. But let's stop, let's back up, and let's make you happy and content. And so you know what joy is, and you experience that, and you can anchor to it, and then focus on, all that other stuff.
Yeah. Your story about who you're training sounds like a Seinfeld episode,
I know, totally. That would be an awesome Seinfeld episode.
Because George is unhappy when he doesn't have a girlfriend, and he's miserable when he has a girlfriend. It's the first thing that came to mind.
Exactly.
That's crazy. Yeah, and I mean you're totally right. It's crazy, that we don't fix our internal problems, and then we just perpetuate other situations. But when you do fix your relationships and internal stuff, then the world opens up. There are no problems. It's crazy.
Totally. Yeah. It's the stuff that used to bother you is a no factor.
Yeah.
We think I talk to friends all the time about the stress that we're feeling and the problems that we're having, and it's so fun to just in the middle of it, stop ourselves and saying how grateful we are for having these first world problems.
Right.
All our first world problems.
Mm-hmm.
And, the stuff that we're so bummed about and stressed out about, 9 out of 10 people on this planet would literally chop off their right arm to trade places with us and have those problems.
Yeah.
And so just stopping and putting it in perspective is really helpful. And we're like, yeah, I guess that's true. And I got to be thankful for being so lucky and fortunate and blessed to live in this country. With all the problems we have, it's still the best country in the world. I wouldn't rather live anywhere else.
Yeah, I would agree.
We're just so blessed, and we have it so good compared to 90% of the population on this planet.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And that by itself is one of the brain training techniques that I have. It's just putting stuff in perspective. Or where you stop and you think, all right, how much is this going to affect my life 6 months from now? And then you think, if it's not going to, it's going to be a no factor. Like you're having a fight with your spouse and you're upset about something. It's like, well, how big a deal is this going to be in 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, the answer is I will have forgotten about it by then.
Yeah.
So then you go, well, 3 months, well, 1 month. How much is it going to affect in a week? And then you can learn how to pick your battles. You're like, well, I probably won't even remember this in a week, so I'm going to let it go.
Yeah.
I think, not their thing. And that's another one. It's just kind of getting it in perspective. But it really helps to stop, breathe, and think. Breathing is another one. It's huge. And I've got this thing from, let me open it up here, from Heart Math. It's this little app. And I don't know if you can see it, but
yeah,
it's this little app, and it's coherence training and it's HRV training. Got this little ear thing that I clip on, and it measures heart rate and the heart rate variability. And so you follow the breathing and you make recommendations and the pacing, and you get these little things that come up on the screen tell you to breathe through the heart and think about gratitude and stuff like that. And it's a heart exercise, it's a brain exercise. And it helps to get you in the right state and to train your brain to get in the right state rapidly. So when you're in a funk and you're about to go for the chips because you want to emotionally eat, or you're about to yell at your spouse, you're able to stop because your PFC and your brain is buffed up from stuff like this. You have the wherewithal to stop, get perspective, do your brain training tricks, whether it's this or NLP techniques or whatever, and then you've got these tools that you can use to be a better person, really, and to enjoy life and to create moments of joy and to have a better life, because it's our choice. Nobody's a victim.
Yeah.
We're all in complete control, which is another brain training technique, is just take back the control. If you're complaining about, well, my life is this way because of this person and this situation that happened to me, let it go. That's yesterday. That's behind you. That's the rearview mirror. And if you think about the size of a rearview mirror compared to the size of the windshield, that's what we should be looking. We should be referencing. It's useful to have a rearview mirror because we can see where we've been to learn, but we never focus on that. We're looking forward through the windshield most of the time. So put it behind you, start moving forward, focus on, the gratitude, the things you have, put everything in perspective, are the brain training techniques, upgrade yourself and become version 2.0, where you're experiencing joy every day and you're loving life. You still have the same circumstances, but you're not holding yourself down by, poor me, victim. You've completely switched it over and you're moving forward. I'm in control. You're taking your power back. And now life is awesome. It's a decision. It's a decision we make every day.
Yeah.
And the more we train that PFC, the easier it is to make that daily decision.
That's all. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's amazing how just a simple decision can turn off all the stress and all the problems, and maybe not turn them off, but they don't matter anymore. They're not as bad. So two interesting things comes to mind. One, I've heard that some stress is good before, but I've never really dug into that. So maybe if you could share more about what you would consider to be good stress, because I think we all know what bad stress is, when it's like a knot in our stomach and it affects us for days. So
Yeah.
what's good stress? And then after we touch on that, maybe let's dive into like one of your favorite brain techniques, or one specifically where we could walk all the way through it, if you don't mind.
So good stress by itself is basically taking you out of homeostasis. So the body wants to be balanced and neutral with everything.
Okay.
And so if a bad stress would be taking it below baseline. So it would be, getting sick, or depressed, something happening traumatic. Good stress is going to be like getting married, any change in heart rate, in your state, any change in emotional state.
Okay.
Anything that causes a change in emotional or physical state is stress. So there's good changes up, there's bad changes down, and it's all change. So it's just change. And so what I try to do to train my brain is to create as much change as I can. And stress is also how you think about it. So if you think about stress as a bad thing always, then a lot of times you're going to mistranslate the good stress and make it feel like a bad stress. And then you're going to take yourself into a place that you shouldn't be, that can be damaging, where you can ruminate and get caught in a downward spiral. So if you can start to think of stress as making you stronger. So when you work out, every exercise session is stress. You're putting your body under a stress, and you're going to come out better on the other side because you're making physiological changes that are good. And when you get married, a big wedding is a huge stress. I'm getting married in March. And Bev
Congratulations.
so, thanks. Yeah, Bev's doing most of the work. And so I'm just helping to, help her manage that stress. This is all great stress. And on wedding day, there's lots of stuff going on, and there's lots of stress going on, but it's a wonderful event. And there's a lot of joy with that too. So it's good to anchor with that. But then something bad happens. And so we can take the same kind of thought process and say, okay, I'm feeling stress. So the good part of this is I'm going to get stronger out of this. Somehow I'm going to get stronger. And so that's good. I'm glad I'm going through this, which is crazy because sometimes it's really bad.
Yeah.
And it's hard to stop yourself and feel grateful for that moment, for that stress. But it's good because you're going to get stronger. And it's a choice. You're choosing to get stronger because of it. And you're choosing to not use it to become a victim and stay a victim, because then you go backwards. But when you give yourself the power, you make the choice to use it to build yourself up and get stronger, then you're going forward and you're looking out that windshield. Did I answer the question? I feel
you
like
did. You did. No, that's great. And,
Okay.
and it's just really interesting. Like, perspective and choice make all the difference in the world. And I'm sure, I'm sure there's tons of, science around it too, because I can just feel it when I make a choice like that. I can feel my physiology change, and I feel better.
Yep.
So, like,
Yep.
as an example, last week I spent like 2 or 3 days interviewing a bunch of people because I'm trying to hire this really key role in my company, and they were great people. I mean, it was great conversations, but it just it didn't feel right, and I was stressed because I'm like, I've got to fill this position.
Oh.
So at the end of 3 or 4 days of doing it, I was like, you know what, the timing's just not right, and I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna let it go, and I immediately felt better, and then I looked at all the time spent, and I was like, this was really valuable because I learned a lot. I learned about what I think I want, what I don't want, where I'll hire. Like, I interviewed some people that were like 100 times more qualified than I could hire right now. And so it was like, now I can see into the future where I'm going. So I let go that I had to make a decision about those people in that moment. And then I just felt instantly better. And then, as always, like, the crazy thing is, a few days later, I was on a sales call with somebody who I thought I was going to sell something to. And it turns out that they're a perfect fit. And in a few days, I'll know, but they're going to work for me. And it was after I let go and just gave up on it.
Wow. That's huge.
It was so cool. And now, like with this new guy that looks like he's going to be joining the team, it's like, it's perfect. It's like a million times better than the quote unquote overqualified people that I was interviewing. And it just feels right. So it's really interesting. And it just kind of like to highlight what you said. The moment that you take control and make a choice, your whole physical being changes. It's so weird. It's weird if you don't think about it or you're not like actively aware of it. And so that just great point there. So yeah, you definitely answered the question. And one thing that came to mind when you're talking about stress of like, you know, the negative and the positive, it kind of reminded me, and I'm not thinking of the perfect analogy, but like when you like bridges have a good stress that hold them up, and that's how they work. And if we didn't have that stress and pressure on it, then they wouldn't hold up and it wouldn't work, and it wouldn't work from a physics standpoint. And then they have the bad pressure, which you don't want like crosswinds at 200 miles an hour because that's not the kind of stress they can handle. But they're both pressure. It's just pressure, you know. And like so that was a perfect explanation. So thanks.
Yeah.
Cool.
And your story of letting go is huge because what you could have done is you could have rushed it and you could have said, I just want to get past the stress. I want to and then thought that in rushing it, making a decision is going to get it behind you. And then you do that, you rush it, you make the decision, and you hire the wrong person. Well, then now how much stress is that going to cause?
Yeah.
Way more.
Way more.
Yeah, way more.
I would have overpaid for not the perfect fit in my case.
Right.
And the money is one thing. Like you can always make more money. Like we talked about that. It's like it's just money, but that wouldn't have been the problem. I would have made an immature or premature choice without realizing, which is it's crazy. And then I let go, and everything just fell in place. Which that happens to me a lot. And every time it happens, I'm still completely amazed that that's how it works. But it happens all the time. I don't know what that is, but it's amazing. So
well, letting go allowed you to step back, think clearly, get a new perspective, and then make the right decision. But it's so hard to do that sometimes.
Yeah.
Because we feel like, I just want to get rid of this stress. And a lot of times we will feel stress about doing something. And then the subconscious brain, which is the boss of us, is most of the brain. The PFC is small, subconscious is big. Subconscious brain says, hey, let's go watch some YouTubes and just get escape from this. Mm-hmm. Go surf Facebook. We can get escape from this. And then you feel relief. Because then you're not thinking about that stress that you're having, not ruminating. So, and then a day or two or a month goes by and that's still there. Well, it's still back there, still causing problems. But that's why people procrastinate. It's because they're trying to find an escape. And they feel that temporary relief. And so the subconscious brain says, see, told you. And then it gets reinforced, and then they're more likely to do that. And then that's how people get addictions too. But letting go is huge. And another word for that is surrender.
Yeah.
And so that's something that Bev and I have experienced recently because, we dated for 5 years. Everything was great except for I was putting up these walls. And so finally she broke it off. And she said, we're friends and we're having a lot of fun and we have this great relationship, but you got these walls. And so I go, yeah, you're right. And so then over the next 6 months when we were apart, we were both being changed. Mm-hmm. And for us, it was a God thing. And we got to the point where we surrendered. We let it go. Total surrender. And then we were able to see clearly God was able to change us into the people we needed to be for each other. Mm-hmm. We got back together, and now it's just amazing. But it wasn't until we let go like you did, where we completely surrendered, where that change happened.
Yeah.
So it's huge. That's huge.
Yeah. It's crazy how that works. That's all I can say. It's never what you think. You just completely let go, and it's not giving up. It's letting go. It's like,
Yeah.
And when you let go or surrender, then it's amazing how everything just like clicks into place and works. And you look back like 3 or 4 months later and you're like, it all happened. and you feel like you didn't do anything in some senses, like, and that's the power of the subconscious is definitely something too that I'm just starting to barely understand. I feel like, I'm not like it's not like I haven't been aware of it, but it's like I just feel like I'm starting to understand the value of investing in my subconscious,
Yes.
which has been fun. So
Yes. Well, and the subconscious, like I said, is the boss if we let it.
Mm-hmm.
And the PFC is the way that we override the subconscious. So the subconscious loves the status quo. Mm-hmm. It loves our routines that we've already established and our habits. And because that's easy. That doesn't take much energy to
mm-hmm.
do what's already programmed in there, the subroutines and the routines that we've established. But anytime we want to try a new routine, that's the PFC's job. So like when you learned to drive, it was hard. It was really awkward.
Mm-hmm.
And you were thinking the whole time and it tired you out. It was fun. It was a good stress, right?
Yeah.
But now when you drive home, I'm sure you've had experiences where you don't actually remember the trip home.
Right. You just got there somehow.
Yeah. Because instead of trying like you did in the beginning, where your PFC has to do all the work, over time you get better and better at it until pretty soon that routine is now taken over by the subconscious. Now your subconscious drives for you. So it's like a lot of other stuff, eating, any habit that we have, any pattern that we have is eventually relegated to the subconscious if the PFC does it enough, because now it's easy. And now the subconscious can take over. It takes a lot less energy. It's the boss. And so the high energy part of the brain, the PFC, is the thing responsible for now programming that, getting rid of old habits, pulling them back out, the bad habits, and replacing them with the good habits. And that's where the brain training techniques come in, is it makes that whole process easier. But also, getting back to what you did when you let go, anytime somebody lets go like that, they're able to also put their emotions behind them.
Yeah.
And emotions, you really get wrapped up in the whole stress thing, what's going on. And so when someone is stressed out and they're all wrapped up in emotions, the subconscious is going to be the main factor of the brain. And the brain and the heart aren't communicating very well. Most people don't know that there's neurons in the heart that are very similar to the brain. It's the only place in the body that has brain neurons besides the brain. And so the heart has its own brain. And through the vagus nerve and other nervous systems, it's talking to the brain constantly. So is the stomach, the gut brain, again, the vagus nerve. And so through the nervous system, the heart and the gut, they're all talking to the brain. And when the heart is talking to the brain, it's telling the brain stuff to calm it down and to think better and to make better decisions. And the brain's talking back, telling it, when to be. So when we're stressed out, the brain it stops listening. It says, nope, I'm too stressed to listen to you. It's kind of like the husband and wife. The heart's the wife, the husband's the brain. The brain husband says, quiet.
I'm doing what I'm doing.
Focus. I'm stressed out. I can handle this. Just beat, 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 beat. And it gives it a rhythm to beat. That's all you do. Just beat, beat, beat. And then there's no heart rate variability. And so, and then the brain's not listening. The wife can't talk. The heart might be starting to scream louder and louder and saying, come on, listen, I know what to do. But the brain is just shut down to that two-way street. And then we do brain training things like this HRV exercise, getting in coherence. And then once you get into that state, you change your state by letting go. That's a brain training technique. Or whatever you need to do to get back into coherence where your heart is able to talk back to your brain. And when you're in coherence, the funny thing is the heart's doing more talking than the brain. The brain doesn't do much talking. Again, kind of like a guy. The brain, guys talk way less than women.
Yep.
And so the heart is able to communicate. And the heart's just telling the brain lots of really valuable, wise stuff. And the heart's just chatter, jibber, jabber, and all this stuff. Talk. And it's all good stuff. And so we're allowing that to happen when we get in the right state. And we're getting healthier, and the physiology is improving. And just like you described how you felt different. That's because your brain, you stepped back, you allowed that communication to resume. And that's where we all need to be.
Yeah.
And another quick way to do it is because a lot of times people get in that crummy state and they get trapped. And they're like, okay, I know there's brain training techniques to do, and I can even think of some, but I don't want to do them. Or they're mad. They go, I want to be mad. I want to stay mad. And, that's fine for temporarily. There's nothing wrong with that. Go ahead, stay mad. Maybe because, even anger can be a resource at times.
For sure. Yep.
Help us even make good decisions to get out of stuff or defend ourselves or whatever it is. So there's not good and bad emotions, but there's states that we can be in, and that there's more beneficial states. And so we're just trying to move more towards getting in those beneficial states. So when we find ourselves caught in a state, this is probably my quickest technique, brain training technique, is immediately go to the power pose, even if you don't feel like it.
Yeah.
Just go up like this. Maybe you're still frowning, but you've just changed your physiology by changing your posture. And this is probably an anchor for 99 out of 100 people. This is an anchor to good emotions.
Yeah.
All their life, every time they feel awesome or they kick that goal or whatever it is, they do this.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing you do. And then get oxygen into your system. So again, you're not trying to change your mood yet. You're not trying to get yourself out of it. You just change your posture. Now you're going to breathe. You're going to breathe in really deep, and you're going to breathe out everything. And breathe in really deep. You're going to slow your breathing down, and then smile. And if you have to fake it, fine. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference between a fake smile and a real smile. And if you can't smile, put a pencil in your mouth.
I've seen that one. It's so funny.
It's the same muscles, and now your subconscious brain thinks that you're smiling, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Is what the subconscious thinks is going on. And then at that point, you're probably able, because you've started to get yourself out of that mood and that state. You're probably able to think of something you're thankful for.
Yeah.
So then just one thing. Just think of one thing you're thankful for. And if it's hard and you're still trapped in that state, then I'm thankful that I can raise my arms over my head, because there's lots of people that can't do that or have a shoulder injury, and that would suck.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I don't have that going on. And if you do have a shoulder injury, then pick another power pose, maybe like that or something.
Yeah.
Whatever, it doesn't matter, but something you've anchored to.
Right.
And then, but those four things: power pose, oxygen, smile, thankful. Post, P-O-S-T, post. Post it. So when you're in a funk, post it.
Very cool. Yeah. I've heard a piece of those before, but the way you put it together made perfect sense. And yeah, it's crazy. I actually did I read about the pencil thing, how and I may have this not completely right, but either Chinese or Japanese culture, like culturally, they're just very stoic.
Yeah.
And they were trying to bring over these people to like assimilate into some big company or some big project or program in the United States. And they were having problems because these Chinese who were happy, they weren't actually unhappy, but they looked like they were, very stoic face, like nothing. So they were saying, go like this, and to teach them how to smile. So,
yeah.
And then I did a little more research on it. I was like, oh yeah, it tricks your mind into thinking that you are smiling. Just one piece of what you just taught us here. So anytime I learn something, I'm like, I'm going to try this. So I was speaking in front of a group of like 30 or 40 people about social media marketing or something. And I said, all right, whenever you come to hear me speak, you're always going to get something weird and new and unusual or just a little bonus. And I'm like, everybody pull out their pen or pencil and put it in your mouth and go like this. I'm like, you got to do it. I made them all do it. And I'm like, now guess what? You're going to learn way more than you would have if I wouldn't have asked you to do this, because your positive emotions and like everything that comes with that opens your mind more than you were a minute ago. So it's really funny you brought that up.
That's great. Yeah, because if you had asked the crowd to smile, that's kind of corny, and they're like, oh, okay, and then
but this is like
corniness,
right?
Smart, yeah.
So it's kind of fun.
Yeah,
do it. I thought it was crazy. I still, if I feel like people are really like tight or stuck, I'll do that. And I did watch a TED talk about this one before, which was like, you can't do this and not, feel better or funny or like it's so weird.
Yeah.
It's so odd to think that like physical action changes emotion, but it totally does. I mean, obviously it's scientifically proven, but when you try it for yourself, it's kind of like, it blows you away.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. So that's awesome. And that's a perfect example. And I think that, the other piece that, let's see if I can remember where I was going with this, but you talk about like kind of our state and our choice and, choosing to do all that stuff. It's amazing the outcome that can come out of that. And like you said, that only takes 30 seconds to change your state. And like you said, you don't even have to feel it in the beginning, and just getting to the point where you're finally like, I'm thankful I can raise my arms or anything like that. The practice of gratitude and thankfulness and everything is really interesting what it does. Oh, I remember where I was going to ask you. I've never ever heard that before, and you're full of all sorts of amazing information, which is why I like having you on here, about how there's brain neurons in your heart and in your stomach. Share a little bit more about that, or where we can read and learn about that more as well, because that's super interesting to me.
Yeah. So there's certain neurons in your heart that are just like brain neurons and that act like brain neurons. So it's really the second brain. There aren't those same neurons in your gut, but the bacteria in your gut talk to each other and to the rest of the body.
Okay.
The bacteria in your gut aren't actually you cells. They're other cells. They're bacteria. But we have more of those cells than we have you cells. So they outnumber your cells drastically.
That's crazy.
And they're all communicating with each other, all talking to each other. And these alien invaders, we need them. Mm-hmm. And it's 80% of our immune system too. So without them, we have no immune system. And if people are getting sick all the time, it's because they don't have a balanced gut microbiome. So because of all that communication to our hunger mechanisms, to our emotions, the gut makes most of the body's serotonin. The brain doesn't. The brain makes a little, but the gut makes most of it. And serotonin is the contentment chemical. So the brain makes dopamine, which is the happiness chemical, and the gut makes most of the serotonin, which it's beyond happiness. It's more of a mood. Dopamine is more of a temporary effect, and serotonin is more of a longer lasting effect. And then oxytocin also along with serotonin, that's where you're bonding with other people. And we need these chemicals. And most people are getting an overdose of dopamine because they're on their Facebook and other things that are on their phone that are really addictive. So they're getting shots of dopamine, which feels similar in some ways to serotonin. And they're eating crappy, and they're not doing the things where they can produce enough serotonin. And so they're trying to fill that void with more dopamine, and they're just getting worse and worse and worse. And that's another reason it's really hard for people to create lasting joy and contentment, is because they're deficient in serotonin. And so that's another huge connection between the gut and the brain. And there's a nerve that goes from the brain down to the stomach, and it connects the whole gut system. And so it's a superhighway of information. So the brain's talking down, the gut's talking back, just like the heart and the brain talk with each other. The gut and the brain are talking always, constantly. And telling the brain what's going on, telling if it's healthy or not, affecting the mood of the brain. Mm-hmm. Because of the chemicals that are being circulated, because of the balance of gut microbiome. And it's huge. And as people get healthier and they eat better and they exercise, all the stuff that's good, exercise by itself, independent of nutrition, changes your gut microbiome favorably. And then you add nutrition onto that, and it's better than twice as good. It's got a compounding effect. And so all these great things you can do for your microbiome to take care of these aliens, because we got to have them, and without them, we're toast.
Yeah.
But there's a whole science behind that. But that's why it's really another brain. So that we have three brains. I was talking to somebody just the other day about they're going to try some talk about somebody trying a head transplant, and so then we started talking about how you can your science could probably someday, probably pretty soon, could take somebody's head and then put it on a box with the circulation and all that kind of stuff to keep it alive, and probably could do it. If we can't now, it probably could be done soon. But that head is missing the heart brain and they're missing the gut brain. They're not going to be the same person.
Wow.
They're going to be somebody completely different. Their mood's going to change. Their personality is going to be different. Their outlook, everything. It wouldn't work in that respect. You might be able to
function at some level, yeah. Huh.
And have to think about some things, but it's without those two brains, it's different. It's a different person.
Awesome. Well, as always, I super enjoyed this, PJ. You are a wealth of knowledge and experience, and just a lot of fun to talk to. So thank you.
That was fun, yeah. It was good talking with you too.
And you mentioned it again, but just to repeat, if people want to learn more about the brain training techniques, where do they go? I know you're launching that right now.
Yeah, braintype.me. Braintype me.
Okay, very
it's
cool.
Probably the easiest thing to remember. Yeah.
Awesome. So everybody can check that out. We'll include that in the show notes as well. And then if they want to learn more about working with you, I know we touched on that on the last episode, but what's the easiest way to get a hold of you?
xgym.com.
Okay.
My email, pj@xgym.com.
Very cool.
Probably the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for being on again, and we'll have you back on again soon, okay?
Right on.
Thanks.
Thanks a ton.
You've been listening to Today's Business Leaders with Gabe Arnold. Remember to subscribe on iTunes. For more information, visit today'sbusinessleaders.com.